Hello everyone, welcome to Megha Discourse where literature meets excellence. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. A cold battlefield in 1066 AD and there is a fire and iron. The sections shields against Norman's arrow and with one arrow that struck King Harold's eye, a whole destiny of England changed, and the history came to an end. So, from that single moment, the Battle of Hastings, a new age began. This is an age of knights, castles, of French speaking kings, English peasants, new words, new ideas, and literature. So, this is the Anglo-Norman Age, the bridge between the heroic word of Anglo-Saxon and the refined brilliance of Chaucer's England. It is like the sword gave to the quill and the warrior became the poet. So let's move to the first part, the historical background of Anglo-Norman Age. So the Anglo-Norman Age started with the Norman Conquest in 1066 when the William Duke of Normandy defeated King Harold in the Battle of Hastings at Senlac Hill. So for the lecture of Anglo-Saxon Age, you can watch my previous video and have an idea about the Anglo-Saxon Age. So this event, it just did not replace the king, but the culture. There is a there is a blending of French and Latin. The Normans were actually Norsemen who had settled in France. They were actually Vikings. They spoke normal French language and brought with them their culture, their continental sophistication, feudalism, and Christian values. So the Anglo-Saxon England was transformed politically, socially, and linguistically. They were feudal system which was not actually in Anglo-Saxon Age. So William introduced feudalism, a system where land was granted to nobles in exchange of loyalty and military services. So they structured society into kings, nobles, knights, and then serfs, or you can say peasants. So the king became the ultimate landowner. This meant that the common people worked, the knights fought, and the nobles ruled. And from this order, it grew a new moral code, that is chivalry. To serve the knight with courage, to lady with devotion, and God with faith. This is the Norman's ideal. Moreover, the social and cultural life. The Normans brought a courtly elegance to England. They built castles, cathedrals, and monasteries, the symbols of both power and piety. So the church became the center of learning and loyalty, writing. Latin was their language. Latin was the language of religion and education. French became the language of court, nobles, and laws. English was spoken by the common people, slowly absorbing words from both French and Latin. So the England has trilingual society, that is French, Latin, and English, which were divided according to their startup. Over time, these three blended and giving birth to Middle English, the language of Chaucer, the language of John Gower, William Langland, and the modern English poets. From this union of tongues was born a language that would one day sing the songs of Shakespeare. Furthermore, literary scene and the characteristics, and what about the literature? So the Norman Conquest changed the tone and the texture of English literature completely. The heroic, the alliterative verse, the pagan tone of Beowulf gave way to rhymed, romantic, and Christian themes. The main features were they were French influenced, literature became elegant, refined, and full of romance. Now the courtly romance was predominant. Now the rhymed verse replaced alliteration. As we have seen that Beowulf is alliterative verse which is of chivalry, courage. But now there was courtly romance, there was courtly love. They were theme of love, faith, and morality, which replaced battle and fate. They were allegory and symbolism appeared recurrently, preparing the ground for medieval prose, medieval moral ideas. They were chivalric ideas which shaped characters like loyalty, bravery, devotion to woman, and moral purity. They were important writers in books which are important for UGC exam or other state teaching exam. Is Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote Historia Regum Britannia, that is the history of kings of Britain. It is written in writing prose. He is the first to give complete story of King Arthur, blending myth and history. His book shaped English national imagination, where real king met legendary heroes. The another is Vase, the famous Roman de Brute, important for UGC NET, which were later translated in English by Layamon. He is a Norman poet who translated and expanded Geoffrey's work like Roman de Brute, which is written in Anglo-Norman French. He introduced the round table symbol of equality among knights. He combined romance, history, and chivalric tools and chivalric ideals. The another one, Layman's Brute, earlier I told you, it was a translated version of Base Roman de Brute. It is translated in early Middle English. It is important because it shows the re-emergence of English language in literature after 150 years. It tells the legendary history of Britain from Brutus to Cadfael. The another famous writing is The Owl and the Nightingale. It is a debate poem between owl, symbol of wisdom and morality, and nightingale, who is a symbol of pleasure and poetry. It is written in rhymed couplets, influenced by French words. It reflects a moral conflict between spirituality and worldly life. So it is an example of dialogue poetry in English. The next one is Orums or Mulum. It is a series of biblical paraphrases and homilies in a verse. It is written by Om, who is a monk who developed his own phonetic spelling system. Linguistically important, it shows early phonetic evolution of English. It is didactic and devotional as one. So just keep it in mind. There is a religious and didactic verse as well, like Lives of Saints, Miracle of Virgins, and homilies were very popular. So literature was deeply moral and instructive, reflecting the strong influence of the church. The French taste for romance entered England. Another subject of poetry is adventure, love, honor, and religion, faith. For example, King Horn, Havelock the Dane, Sir Orfeo, which I told you. These romances glorify knighthood, loyalty, and the quest for virtue. Now, there is an alliterative revival. By the late 13th century, English writers began reviving alliteration, the old Anglo-Saxon words technique. This is seen in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Firesbowman by William Langland. Okay, there is a question, what does actually alliteration means? Write down in comment section with example. So this period marked the fusion of old and new, where the spirit of Anglo-Saxon met the Anglo-Norman refinement. The rhythm of Beowulf returned, but now it spoke in the language of faith. There is a Pearl poet also, the anonymous poet of Pearl, patience, cleanness, and Sir Gawain and Green Knight. They combined Christian idols with Arthurian chivalry. They used alliteratory verse with symbolic imagery. Sir Gawain represents the moral testing of man and the ideas of chivalry. So the seeds has sown now in the Anglo-Norman Age. There were many kings like Henry II, Henry II, Richard the Lionheart, King John, Edward I, II, and III. So many. It is not so important so far as the exam is concerned. So friends, the Anglo-Norman Age was not just a chapter between sections and Chaucer. It was the crucible where English identity was forced. It transformed language from Old English to Middle English. It is the blending of Latin, French, and English. It brought many words in English like justice, court. So it introduced romance, chivalry, and moral allegory. It replaced heroic fatalism with Christian hope, and it taught literature to be refined, rhythmic, and human. So from conquest rose creativity, from foreign tongues rose a national voice, and from silence rose English literature itself. So if you found this lecture insightful, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Megha Discourse. Now we will explore the age of Chaucer, where English finally found its golden voice. Bye-bye.